Welcome back to Shivspedia. Today, let's have a reading session from Roald's The World #1 Storytellers book, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The first chapter. Here comes Charlie. These two very old people are the father and mother of Mr. Bucket. Their names are Grandpa Joe and Grandma Joseph. And these two very old people are the father and mother of Miss Bucket. Their names are Grandpa George and Grandma Georgina. This is Mr. Bucket and this is Miss Bucket. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket have a small boy whose name is Charlie. This is Charlie. How would you do? How would you do? And how would you do again? He's pleased to meet you. The whole of this family, the 6 grown-ups, count them if you want, and little Charlie Bucket lived together in a small wooden house on the edge of a great town. The house wasn't nearly large enough for so many people, and the life was extremely uncomfortable for them. There were only 2 rooms in the place altogether, and there was only one bed. The bed was given to the 4 old grandparents because they were too old and tired. They were so tired that they never got out of it. Grandpa George and Grandma Josephine on this side, and Grandpa George and Grandma Georgina on this side. Mr. and Mrs. Bucket and little Charlie Bucket slept in the other room upon mattress on the floor. In summertime it wasn't too bad, but in the winter freezing cold drops billowed across the floor all night long, and it was so awful. There wasn't any question of them being able to buy a better house or even one more bed to sleep in. They were far too poor for that. Mr. Bucket was the only person in the family with a job. He worked in the toothpaste factory, where he sat all day long at the bench and screwed the little caps on the top of tubes of toothpaste after the tubes had been filled. But the toothpaste caps screwer is never paid very much money, and poor Mr. Bucket, however hard he worked and however fast he screwed on the caps, was never able to make enough to buy 1/2 of the things that so large a family needed. There wasn't enough money to buy proper food for them all. The only meals they could afford were bread and margarine for breakfast, boiled potato and cabbage for lunch, and cabbage soup for supper. Sundays were a bit better. They all looked forward to Sundays because then, although they had exactly the same, everyone was allowed a second helping. The Buckets, of course, didn't starve, but every one of them, the 2 old grandfathers, the 2 old grandmothers, Charlie's father, Charlie's mother, and especially little Charlie himself, went about from morning till evening with a horrible empty feeling in their stomachs. Charlie felt it was worst of all, and although his father and mother often went without their own share of lunch or supper so that they could give it to him, it wasn't nearly enough for the growing bear. He desperately wanted something more filling and satisfying than cabbage and cabbage soup. The one thing he longed for more than anything else was chocolate. Walking to school in the morning, Charlie could see great slabs of chocolates piled up high in the shop windows, and he would stop and stare and press his nose against the glass, his mouth watering like mad. Many times a day, he would see other children taking bars of creamy chocolate out of their pockets and munching them greedily. And that, of course, was pure torture. Only once a year on his birthday did Charlie Bucket ever get to taste a bit of chocolate. The whole family saved up their money for a special occasion, and when the great day arrived, Charlie was always presented with one small chocolate bar to eat all by himself. And each time he received it on those marvelous birthday morning, he would place it carefully in a small wooden box that he owned and treasure it as though it were a bar of solid gold. For the next few days, he would allow himself only to look at it but never touch it. Then, at last, when he could stand it no longer, he would peel back a tiny bit of the paper wrapping at one corner to expose a tiny bit of chocolate. And then he would take a tiny nibble, just enough to allow the lovely sweet taste to spread out slowly over his tongue. The next day he would take another tiny nibble, and so on. And in this way Charlie would make his 6-penny bar of birthday chocolate last him for more than a month. But I haven't told you about the one awful thing that tortured little Charlie, the lover of chocolates more than anything else. This thing for him was far, far worse than seeing slabs of chocolate in the shop windows or watching other children munching bars of creamy chocolate right in front of them. It was the most terrible, torturing thing you could even imagine. And it was this. In the town itself, actually, within the sight of the house in which Charlie lived, there was an enormous chocolate factory. Just imagine that. And it wasn't simply an ordinary, enormous chocolate factory either. It was the largest and most famous in the whole world. It was Wonka's factory, owned by a man called Willy Wonka, the greatest inventor and maker of chocolates that there has ever been. And what a tremendous marvel place it was. It had huge iron gates leading into it, and a high wall surrounding it, and smoke bleaching from its chimneys, the strange whirring sounds coming out from deep inside it. And outside the wall, for half a mile around in every direction, the air was scented with the heavy, rich smell of melting chocolate. Twice in the day, on his way to and from school, little Charlie Bucket had to walk right past the gates of the factory. And every time he went by, he would begin to walk very, very slowly, and he would hold his nose high up in the air and take long, deep sniffs of the gorgeous chocolatey smell and all around him. Oh, how he loved that smell, and oh, how he wished he could go inside the factory and see what it was like. So friends, today we have completed the first chapter. Let's go through the second chapter a few days after.